Have you ever wondered if the brands you support are really as green as they claim to be? Or if your everyday choices actually make a difference when it comes to the environment? Today's episode is a little bit different from our usual conversations, but trust me, it is just as important and packed with real talk that can help you make more empowered choices. I'm sitting down with John Pabon, a sustainability expert and former United Nations consultant, to unpack the truth behind corporate responsibility, greenwashing, and the massive power we actually have as consumers. We are talking about climate change, environmental impact, media influence, but in a way that feels actionable and not overwhelming. If you've ever felt a little helpless about the state of the world, this conversation is going to leave you feeling a lot more hopeful and helpful. And if you're new here, you're listening to the How We Get Through podcast, a space for real, unfiltered conversations with healers, helpers, and humans who've been through it. I'm your host, Jen, a licensed therapist and your guide into how we get woo, a space where we don't just listen to healers, you experience them. Inside the community, you'll find rituals, journal prompts, meditations, and soul-expanding live events that leave you feeling more intuitive and whole. So if you're feeling the pull, we'd love to have you inside. The link's in the show notes. Welcome or welcome back to How We Get Through. Welcome back to How We Get Through. We have a special guest for you today, you guys. The energy's already a lot, and I love it. John Pabon, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. This is going to be amazing. The energy is absolutely already up.
It's already up. John, you're in Melbourne currently, but you are a California native.
Yep. So I think we sort of grew up almost down the street from each other as we found out. So yeah, originally from the Los Angeles area, and then I've sort of been moving around the world further and further away from family. So I'm sure you might have thoughts on that. So
Good for you.
LA to New York, Shanghai, Korea, and now here in Melbourne, Australia. Not Florida, in case anybody thought I was in Melbourne, Florida.
Florida. Yeah. That's a good distinction. And John, so I found you, and it's kind of not typical what we're going to talk about, but I do think it's really important. We kind of blend like mental health, spirituality, all the things. I have a lot of moms that are our listeners. But you are an author, a UN consultant, and you are the
Yep.
sustainability, I was going to say sustainability queen, but sustainability king,
Yes.
whatever
Either
you
way's
want.
fine, whatever I want.
Whatever you want. And I'm just so excited to talk to you because there's so much shit that is happening. I mean, on a spiritual level, I just think, Mother Earth, she's like, fuck you guys, watch me. And she's just cleansing a lot. But it's like, it's in our faces. We can't ignore it any longer. And it's been in our faces. So, but first I would like to know, like, how did you get to the UN? How did you become like, fuck you to the man? What are we doing?
It's I guess it's a sort of strange story, but it's probably not unique. I went to school for one thing. So I originally went to school for music, thought that was going to be like, I'm going to be a musician. It's what I'm doing. And then about a year in, I realized, as you do when you get about 18 or 19, I'm never going to make any money out of this. Like, this is a stupid decision. So then I sort of floated around in school figuring, okay, what do I want to do? And I ended up in political science. I was my very last general education course that I had to do. And I was like, oh, God, I don't want to do this. It sounds so stupid. I hate this stuff. And then it was just that old story of one teacher changing the trajectory of somebody's life. And this teacher was just so amazing and really got me into thinking differently about the world, thinking a little bit more altruistically, even though I always sort of thought that way, really honing in on that. And eventually figuring out, okay, I want to sort of work at the international level. I don't want to work at the U.S. State level. So that's kind of where things ended up. I left school with my degree, my undergraduate degree, moved to New York in the hopes of eventually getting close to the UN, networking in somehow while I did my graduate degree. And whatever the universe had in store, I ended up getting a job at the UN while I was doing my grad degree. I was there for several years doing a bunch of different stuff. The UN likes to throw you around in a lot of different places, so that was a great experience. But also from a lot of the mentors I had there, they said, this isn't really a place where you start your career. It's more a place where you end your career. So why don't you go get a little bit more experience in the private sector? And so I jumped into consulting, and that's kind of where I've been the rest of my career. How I got into sustainability, though, was totally by accident. So I went on a trip to Shanghai just for a little summer vacation, absolutely loved it, came back to New York. It was the height of the global recession. Everybody's like, oh, I'm poor. I don't know what to do. Like, I can't, do I eat today or do I take a taxi home from work sort of conversations. And in Shanghai, none of that was happening. So I was like, okay, let's just try something and move over there. I thought it'd be a year, maybe 2 years. It ended up being a decade. But I had to figure out, what do I do with all this experience in the public sector with the UN and public sector clients in a very commercial city? So Shanghai is capitalism on steroids. And I fell into sustainability, and my type of sustainability, the piece of the sustainability universe that I work in, is really with private sector companies to help them be better. So working on their strategies to improve what they do. So kind of a blending of the public sector and the private sector work. And it's been a great ride so far. But as you said, there's a lot of shit going on that is changing the trajectory of what all of the folks in my profession certainly are doing, but how all the rest of the world should be viewing things as well.
Yeah, and I would love it if you could give us a little bit of a history around sustainability and, like, the greenwashing, and then where are we now? Everything's super chaotic right now, but give us a little bit of, like, the consumer experience and what have we been, like, exposed to?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a good starting point is to define sustainability, because if I ask five people to give me a definition, I'll get 100 different definitions. So most people think sustainability is hugging the trees and saving the polar bears, and that's part of it. Sure, it's the green side of things, but that's just a small part of what sustainability is. Sustainability today is anything related to saving the planet or people. So you have the green side, you have the social element, which is where I mostly do my work. So helping workers, so workers' rights, labor rights, things happening in factories, animal welfare, supply chain and logistics, all these sorts of things. And then there's a really boring governance side of sustainability, which I dabble in as well, which is more looking at, okay, how do we strategize? How do we operationalize this stuff? How do we communicate this in a way that's not going to be greenwashing, which is when companies lie about the good things, quote unquote, that they're doing? And how do we keep everybody accountable? So sustainability is pretty much everything at this stage of the game, even though most people just think the green side. So hopefully people are hearing this thinking, okay, I can think a
There's
bit
more.
bigger about that.
Yeah.
There's so much more. And the reason I start with that, A, definitions are important, but B, that means for people who may not be so interested in the green side of things, which, being perfectly honest and candid, I honestly don't care about the environmental side of things. I do my part, but it just doesn't
It's
resonate
not your
with me.
passion.
It's not my passion. There's plenty of scientists and people that do that. I resonate more with helping the people side of things. So hopefully anybody hearing that can think, okay, well, maybe there's a lot more that I can do. To the history of sustainability, though, is a very different thing. So we usually say sustainability, modern sustainability, started in about 1962 with the release of Rachel Carson's book, Silent Spring. International bestseller, still on the bookshelves today, still selling millions of copies every year. She basically looked at the detrimental impact of pesticides on the human body. So that's sort of the start. Things progressed during that Sustainability 1.0 period. You had the start of international organizations like the UN Environment Program and the World Wildlife Fund. And my favorite sustainability fun fact is that the first Earth Day, 1970 or 72, was actually started by a group of American senators. So I know. Can
Wow.
you imagine that happening today? So
No.
that's exactly. And John Kerry, the future Secretary of State,
Mm.
wasn't one of the senators then, but he actually gave one of the keynote addresses as a college student during that time too. So very different world. Very much a shared understanding of kind of what the issue was and what we had to do. And then we had to wade through the muck of the 80s and the 90s and companies really not caring, companies jumping on the sustainability bandwagon and kind of diluting the message for their own profit. But around the year 2000-ish, sustainability kind of 3.0, I guess, companies started to realize, okay, we can't keep doing these things that we're doing. We have to be better. Consumers are demanding it. It's just not a sustainable business model. The public started to wake up as well, because for so long we sort of attributed anything around sustainability and doing good for the planet as sort of a fringe, greeny, eco-activist kind of a thing. But the general public started to realize, like you mentioned in the intro, oh my God, there's something going on. We should do something about that too. And that kind of leads us to today, which is a really interesting transition period. And it's been going on for about 5 years, where on the surface, it looks like a lot of particularly private sector companies are kind of taking their foot off the gas a little bit, putting sustainability on the back burner. There's a million other things they need to be focused on. But what's actually happening, and hopefully this is a more positive message, is companies, instead of saying, oh, we can do everything, they're saying, okay, we can actually only do these 3 or 4 things and have a genuine impact. Let's just focus on that. So it does look like things are being scaled back, but in reality, we're focusing our efforts into something we can actually have a genuine impact on. Last thing I'll say about all this is when people are considering, okay, hopefully somebody's listening to this thinking, okay, what can I do though? Which is the ultimate question. I separate kind of the three big groups of potential doers into people, everyday individuals, the bottom up sort of approach that we started out in the 60s with. You have government, which is the public sector, and we know very well that government is not doing anything. They don't really care, with a few big exceptions, but most governments around the world don't care. They're just worried about being reelected. And then you have the private sector. The private sector is, for me at least, and the work I've done with them, is the group that's going to really be pushing the needle forward because they have access to resources that people don't. They have access to capital that is bigger than most countries. So we should really be pushing them to be doing the lion's share of the work. And they got us into the mess, so they should be fixing it as well. But I say all that because I think people, when they think about saving the world, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do about that? I'm only one person and I'm up against this juggernaut of the private sector. I would just caution people to, keep doing what you're doing. I don't want to tell anybody not to do the amazing things that we're doing to save the planet, but it's not just on our shoulders to be doing everything. There are other segments of players that need to be doing their part as well.
Which is helpful because I think there's obviously personal accountability for everything, and then there's like then we're like holding government accountable, we're holding companies accountable, and that's what is kind of crazy, and what I is so exciting to see is how much we can say or vote with our money or with our voices or with things and saying like, "Hey, I'm gonna boycott this company because of whatever." Or like we just had a boycotting day of like not purchasing from certain companies last Friday. So it is we can kind of like mobilize in some way. And it's interesting that some of the companies that care can say, "Hey, we're going to be really honest with you that we can't save the world by doing all the things, but we can like maybe use this plastic that's a little bit more like digestible for the earth," Like, and so that builds trust, though. That builds trust with customers. And then it does feel like, oh, I can support this company because they're supporting me and what my values and beliefs are.
Absolutely. And had you asked me or said something to me, 5 or 10 years ago, around the lines of, the way you spend your money is going to make a difference, I would have laughed and be like, oh, that's so trite and naive. But it's absolutely true. And I don't know why I realized this so late in life, but absolutely the way people spend their money is what is going to make a difference because, we talk a lot about, and this is not my area of expertise, but we need to get rid of the capitalist system. Capitalist system is bad. And yeah, absolutely it is. I'm not an economist, so I hope there's a brilliant economic mind finding a different system and really trying to push that forward. But until we get there, this is the system we have. So we have to work within it. One of the few silver linings of capitalism is that businesses respond to how consumers spend money. And I've seen it firsthand. I see it in the work that I do is if a consumer segment is not responding to something, a business will very quickly pivot when they're losing money. So all of that says, the way we spend our money absolutely makes an impact in how companies strategize and think, particularly around saving the planet.
Right. Are there any companies, so you are very opinionated, which I love.
Understatement of the century.
So I would love your perspective on maybe certain companies that you see that aren't doing a great job and that we could maybe pivot away from.
Can we name names?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I don't want you getting sued or death
Can I?
threats. Yeah, I don't know. Ask your lawyers. Find some lawyers.
Rhymes with
So
Schmamathon.
yeah, that's it. That's fine. We can do that. That'll hold up in court. So when we look at kind of the industrial or private sector, right? We think there's so many different individual sectors, and in the research for the Great Greenwashing, it really comes down to like 20-ish sectors, right? You have those that are doing more when it comes to being better, and I'll preface all of this by saying no company is perfect. I don't think anybody is of the illusion that a company is perfect. So we're not talking about perfection. We're talking about doing better than most. So on one end are the ones that are doing better. They tend to be in highly regulated industries. So because they have to be better, they are better. So finance, medical, med tech, healthcare. And then also those that, because of time, they've been able to evolve the right processes to be better. And a lot of those happen to be fast fast moving consumer goods, FMCG. So anything you buy in a store, because they have intricate supply chains and they've had to evolve to be better. On the other end are those that will never be sustainable until they close their doors because their business model is not set up to be sustainable. So oil, gas, mining, defense, and tobacco. Basically anything that kills its end user can't be sustainable. That's kind of human rights
Huh.
101. Don't kill your end user.
Interesting.
Funny that. And then everything else sort of sits in the middle. So to varying degrees of success. The one call out really is kind of the fashion industry, particularly fast fashion, which is kind of teetering on, is it going to be unsustainable or can it salvage itself? And companies are working their way through that. So and I'm glad you asked who the bad companies are because it's much easier than finding the good companies, unfortunately, because there's so many more examples. So I think the ones people are probably going to see the most are greenwashing ads and claims coming out of those unsustainable companies. As much as it boggles the mind, the oil and gas industry continues to talk about how good it is for the planet. And I hope that 99% of people will see through that because they've been doing it since the very beginning of the modern movement. Even, I believe it was the UN's climate conference last year, or maybe the UN General Assembly the year before, ExxonMobil took out an entire two-page spread in Business Week talking about its green credentials and how good it is for the planet. And you just got to go,
Hmm.
like, nobody's fallen for this, guys. So
Right.
they're
And who is
really
credentialing you to be
well,
green?
and that's the
Yourself?
question, right? Is who? Well,
Yeah.
yeah, usually. So those are usually the most egregious examples that we see of companies really being bad and not giving two shits about being bad. It's more along the lines of companies saying one thing and maybe making a small claim that is true when the entire universe of things going on around them maybe isn't so great. So we see this a lot coming from big companies that are, I talked about the fast moving consumer goods sector. Yeah, they're not perfect. They're doing okay, but a lot of it needs to be improved. So they'll talk about, oh, we have really good processes around, this sounds so boring as I say it, but it's true. We have really good processes around our supply chain. Or this is a good one because we're coming up on International Women's Day. We care about our female workers. Like you're going to see lots of claim. We care about our female workers, but if you dig into that, is there pay parity? No. Do they actually do anything? Is there maternity? Is there anything along the lines of actually caring? No, but it looks good on a social media tweet. So these are the things that people really need to be looking out for. I can't really name names, not because I don't want to, but because if I did, we just have to basically list every single company that operates because no company is doing good. On the flip side of things, we sort of know the companies that are trying to do better, the ones that have kind of this altruism embedded into the business. So companies like a Patagonia or a Columbia, if you look at fashion, because they were built that way. Ben& Jerry's is another great company that really has that social good element built into how they were created and founded because of the people that founded the company. The Gap is another one, a very socially conscious company, but those are, like we said at the beginning, pretty rare indeed.
Yeah. Wasn't there kind of a movement in the last maybe 5 years where, like, if you started a business, you should also have, like, something you're, like, sponsoring or I don't like, I just felt like everybody was like, "Oh, I know, it's like 10% goes to this, like, proceeds to this," or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a big movement for that. It was just sort of an organic thing that happened. It wasn't prescribed, it wasn't regulated, but companies knew, and I'm going to be a cynic because I try to be positive, but most of me is a cynic. They were doing that because they knew consumers were demanding it, not because they actually wanted to give any money to charity. They would rather save that 10% and put it to the bottom line for shareholders. But it worked. I guess the ends justified the means because they did do the charitable giving. And I suppose the big watch out for me when it comes to that is, did they do it once or are they doing it continuously? Because we don't need charitable giving once. We need it over long periods of time. So it'd be interesting to look back at some of those companies today and say, hey, after 5 or 10 years, are you still giving 1% even of your profits to some charitable organization?
Right, exactly.
I'm going to guess no.
Yeah. Yeah. We aren't demanding it anymore.
That's it.
That's the problem. Yeah,
Out of sight, out of mind.
exactly. Okay, what about a company that is like, "Ship this on Wednesday in fewer boxes, and it's better for the earth." Is that
Who are you
actually better
talking
for the
about?
earth?
Well, tech tech so if we were going to court with that claim, technically, yeah, it is better for the earth. They're not lying. What would be even better for the earth is if they weren't selling, massive amounts of stuff that people don't need. That would be even better. But we're not quite there yet. So I suppose those little steps of reducing the potential impact is a move in the right direction. And the way I approach all of this, and I hope people have kind of realized this by this point, is I'm not a greenie, I'm not an activist. I don't expect us to be flipping a switch and changing everything for the better tomorrow. I wish it was that easy. It's not that easy. If a company is making genuine steps to move the needle in the right direction, that's a win for me. And it's a very slow process. And I think where a lot of people get tripped up when it comes to saving the planet or people is they expect it to be done yesterday. I wish it was that easy to do, and it's not. And every day I get up, and this is going to sound so floofy, but it's true. And I ask myself, how can I put myself out of a job today? Because that's how I should be approaching this. So, I shouldn't be, as a sustainability consultant, constantly saying, oh, we need to be doing this, that, and the other thing. I don't want to take the McKinsey model of, causing a problem and then trying to fix it. We should just be fixing problems. But it's not as easy as that. So if Schmamazon is reducing the amount of boxes they're sending each day, even by a little bit, that can actually have a massive impact because of the size of their organization. It
Okay.
doesn't give them leeway to continue being bad, but it's sort of a nod to them trying to be a bit better, given the massive amount of operational things that they have going on as well.
Right, right. What about the trend of products greenwashing, like cleaning products? Is that still happening?
Yes, I think the cleaning product stuff is interesting because you do see a lot of brands now, both big global brands that have created sort of these small sub brands that look kind of mom and pop, but they're not really. But then you also have mom and pop companies that are starting out that claim to be green, and they kind of fall into two different camps. So the big companies that are doing this, they're totally greenwashing. They know better. They know their stuff is not perfect for the earth. It may be a little bit better than the main product line that they have, but that's just blatant lying. For the mom and pop companies that are starting out, maybe they're being genuine in their intentions. Maybe they've just accidentally told a lie, right? Because they didn't know any better. And that second group, we can fix that stuff. We can fix accidents. We can fix lies. We can fix accidental greenwashing. It's more the large companies that are doing it on purpose, trying to pull wool over consumers' eyes, is where I really take issue. And, these companies are so cashed up that none of this stuff happens by accident. They go through market research and consumer trials, and they find the best way to shape a message where nobody is going to question its environmental credentials, and that is very concerning. They're happy to spend millions of dollars doing that versus millions of dollars actually doing
Making a
something better.
product.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I mean, is it possible to make a product that organic or that clean?
That's
I'm
the
wondering.
question.
Right.
There may not be. There may not be. And I think for all industry, whether it's cleaning products or anything else, the ultimate question is, can we create a product, a sector, an industry, a company that is genuinely 100% sustainable? I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that hasn't happened yet. There may be people that say, yeah, I know an entirely sustainable company, and that's great, but by and large, it hasn't happened. So the question remains, is it even possible to be truly sustainable, or are we just looking at being better than we were yesterday? Is that as good as it's going to get?
Yeah, and maybe that's the question that we need to ask a little bit more versus like a very black and white one. Like, because what if a company is 100% sustainable? What does that look like in people and product?
You're actually asking? Yeah, so, the 100% sustainable company, if you're looking at in the environment side of things, so we usually separate into what, I'm gonna use an acronym even though I know I shouldn't, ESG. So E is environment, S is social, G is that governance element. So, the environmental side of things, for a company to be entirely sustainable means they either have 0 impact on the planet, so that means not cutting down a tree, not having a impact on water or the air, or it could mean that they have a regenerative impact. So that means that even though they may be cutting down a tree, they plant 2 trees instead. So they're regenerating the earth somehow. That's possible. And there are companies playing with different versions of how to do that because that's kind of an easy lift. Easy, quote unquote lift. The social side of things, the S side of things, Do they have all of their operations in line? Are they paying people appropriate living wages? Is it equal between genders? Are they giving people the right amount of time off, men and women, paternity, maternity? All this sort of stuff plays into that. If they're doing that, cool. That's really hard to do, especially if a company has an intricate supply chain where they're producing in places in, let's say, Southeast Asia, where regulation isn't as strict and they're basically outsourcing to those places because it's cheap, not because they care about workers. Then the governance side of things. Have they followed all regulations, which at this stage of the game is very, very difficult to do because there's so much regulation around sustainability, governmentally, individual countries, internationally. If they've done all that and they've managed to communicate all that without greenwashing and to the effect of really engaging stakeholders the right way, so stakeholders read their sustainability reports, which nobody reads sustainability reports, let's be honest, then maybe they can be a sustainable company. But that's a lot of hoops to jump through when all they're trying to do is make a profit.
Right.
So to get there, you really have had all of that stuff in place when you started the business. But for most multinational companies today, they started hundreds of years ago before this was even a part of our conversation. So they did
Right.
not begin with any of that in mind. So that means, and this is why it's taking so long to do anything good, they're having to upend and unpick all of these processes that have been in place for over 100 years to try to recreate a business that is entirely, they're basically creating an entire new business to try to be better. And that isn't from, if we think of it just from a purely capitalistic, greedy, business perspective, that's a massive investment nobody's going to want to do.
No one wants to do. Right. Right.
So any
Until it
company that is,
costs their
and that's it.
customer.
It's the oh shit moment that companies have to go through. Nike did not care about the child labor in their supply chain until they realized kids were making their shoes. Then all of a sudden, oh, we better do something about it. And I don't mind that. I wish there were more oh shit moments for companies where they just get raked over the coals in the public space because then it actually creates change. I wish it didn't take that for companies to be better, but it does.
Yeah. What do you is there, a correlation between, like, and this is more environmental, but we just had the fires here in LA. Obviously, there's hurricanes, there's a lot of crazy stuff that Mother Earth's, like, clearing again. What is there a correlation between that and companies and sustainability? I
Absolutely.
mean, obviously,
So,
but, like, what is it?
yeah. So let's talk about. Let's talk about the resniks. So in California, you just had the wildfires in LA, and I as a California myself, I know the wildfires that we usually have, but they're usually in August, September. They're never really in December and January, and these were obviously particularly bad. A lot of wildfires happen because of changes to environmental conditions, particularly a lack of water, right? It makes sense. The Resnicks. So the Resnicks are a very wealthy couple. They live in Beverly Hills. They own the Wonderful brand of companies. So Palm Wonderful, the pomegranate juice. They own Fiji Water. They own Wonderful Nuts. And they operate out of the Central Valley. And they require a lot of water for every single bit of agricultural product that they produce. A lot of water. So they hold land rights on, I think it's something to the order of 60% of California's water. And they keep that for themselves. And what they do is because of some really, backroom dealings that happened in the mid 90s, they actually charge the California Fire Department for the use of their water, even in times of crisis. So the reason you saw a lack of water to fight the fires in LA is because the Resnicks were holding on to the water rights. That's just one company, and
Wow.
they are probably the most despicable people I have ever come across in my research around really unethical, bad people. So, and that's just one example of one company operating out of the Central Valley. They also, because they own Fiji Water, they have done have had detrimental impacts on the nation of Fiji. They've not invested in infrastructure, but they've gladly taken all the water from the country. So now Fiji is a water-starved country. So these are not the people we want running businesses, particularly for a brand that positions itself as sort of this good for you, good for the planet, healthy kind of a product, right? So a really egregious example that works really well with the question you were asking around environmental impacts. But with anything around the environment, the changes we're making, the reason we talk about climate change, the reason we talk about rising sea levels is because with every small little change that we're doing to the earth, there is a reaction. So if you look at what happened in the Ozarks, was it the Ozarks or the Appalachians over the past year where you saw hurricanes happening inland in places where hurricanes should not happen. We look at this and I use the analogy of the frog in the boiling pot that a lot of people know. So if you have a frog in a slowly warming pot of water, they're not going to know they're being boiled alive. That's kind of where we are right now, right? We see these things happening and we go, oh, it's just a hurricane, or oh, that's just the fifth Category 5 hurricane today, or oh, there's typhoons happening in places they don't belong, and there's fires in California when there shouldn't be, and we just go, oh, that's interesting, because we've slowly been boiled in this pot of water, not realizing, no, this is not normal. It's not even normal if we look back 1 or 2 years, let alone,
Right.
10 or 15 years ago. And the media has a lot of culpability in this because they're not really being front and center about saying, hey, all of this with climate change. During the fires in California, during what happened in North Carolina last year with the flooding, very rarely would a media organization make the obvious link that I'm sure a lot of viewers would make is, oh, this has something to do with climate change. People don't need to know the science behind it, but the link should be, I hope it is for a lot of people, very clearly there.
Do you think people are kind of sick of hearing of climate change? Like, I feel like the connection is we know it's there, but we're like, oh, it's climate change. Yeah, oh, it's climate change. It's like become so just boring or like not as bedazzled, And so it
I'm tired of
feels
hearing about it.
right. Yes.
So, I get it, like, and, the one thing I've always talked about when it comes to sustainability and the profession, our Achilles heel, has been how we communicate all of this, and it's been the same since the beginning, and I would have loved to have been in the room when whatever marketing geniuses came up with the messaging. It's the Mad Max future. It's everybody in leather jackets on motorcycles in the desert. It's the polar bear on the melting ice cap. And if you're one of how many people do we have on the planet now? 10 billion people. You're sitting back on your couch watching those ads on TV, the ad of the girl that you can sponsor in some far off country for the price of a cup of coffee, whatever it is. You go, well, I'm one of 10 billion people. What the hell am I supposed to do about all of that? We've been really bad with the communications, and that's not gotten any better since those messages came out in the 1980s. It's even gotten worse because now, not only is it the sort of apathy that's created from these types of messages, but then you have the doomism as well, the headlines, and the only thing that we ever see is how bad it is. And you know what? Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. We're going to survive. We'll be fine, but it's going to be even worse than it is now. But that's not what we want to see all the time. Like, I want positive stories, not sort of, Pollyanna positive stories. I want to see good things going on too. And maybe that will encourage more people to be doing good things too, not just sitting back going, well, I guess we're screwed. What's the point? Because that's kind of where people's heads are right now is we're screwed. What's the point? And I get that. I suppose when it comes to sort of the messaging today, the super complicating factor is when you look at social media, a lot of the doomist messages, even the ones that look scientific, they're actually being pushed by oil and gas companies, defense companies, companies that are using social media and communications messages around how screwed we all are to push their own narrative. It's the latest form of greenwashing. And if you're just somebody, scrolling through Twitter or TikTok, or actually it doesn't happen very much on TikTok, but Twitter, that cesspool, it absolutely does. So you look at that and you go, oh, well, it looks authentic. It must be true. And then you go, well, okay, well, forget it. And that's what these organizations and lobbying groups want you to think. They want you to think that we're screwed and there's no point in doing anything because that helps them make a profit. Because if you think we're screwed, what's the point of not buying a gas guzzling car? Might as well just do that if we're going to hell in a handbasket anyways, and that just profits them. So all of that to say, be careful with the messages you consume and always do a second bit of research to find out if something is true or not. And yeah, I know. Oh my God, he said research. Sorry, that's sort of where we are in our timeline. You got to
Yeah.
do it. So until companies become better, and they are moving in that direction to be better, that's kind of where we are. You have to do your research and you have to also trust your gut a lot of times. I think that'll get people out of a lot of problems is if they just trust their gut. If something looks and sounds too good to be true, probably is.
Yeah. There is so like I'm pretty detached from the news because I just
You're better for it.
can't. And when I hear like something crazy, I'm like, there's no way that's happening. Like I'm just like, there's no way that is a thing. But it's interesting. And even if it like is, but it's you see people start to believe these crazy, crazy things. And when you're so far removed from it, it's like not even in your sphere that it could even happen. So it's just, yeah, it's just interesting. But I think with the climate change messaging is that you're so right. It's been the same. It's been the same. And that's what makes it tiring and, like, less effective. And it is I'm sure there's so many great things that we actually have done since then, but we're like, that's not salacious.
No, and this is not something we want to be salacious. We want to be pushing the balanced, positive stuff because that's what's going to get people to act. And one of the things I bang on about over and over again, anytime I'm talking to anybody, a podcast, an audience, a keynote, whatever it might be, is we're well past the time of raising awareness.
Yeah.
And you mentioned this at the
Yes.
beginning, right? If you don't know something is going on, then you're purposely being obtuse. So you got your head in the sand, and I don't know what to do with you. I'm not going to waste my time. So we're past that stage, and I think the trap a lot of those that are kind of on the front lines of sustainability, the poster children, especially those in the eco-activist community, which I've very publicly taken issue with, the Just Stop Oils and then these groups that you see in the news, is they think we still need to be raising awareness, and we're well past that. No, people know it's not the awareness anymore. Now it's about, okay, give me what I have to do to make a difference.
Yeah.
Tell me what I'm supposed to do with all of this. I know we're screwed, but
What's
give
our
me something.
action?
What's our action? And that's what they don't do when they're throwing tomato soups on priceless works of art.
Yeah. And so maybe that's your cue when you're consuming media. Like, if there's not an action there, then it's not helpful for you. And
Absolutely not. And
keep
just
scrolling.
keep scrolling, ignore it because there are plenty of channels and creators and influencers and even media outlets that do talk about the good stuff and the actionable stuff that you should be doing. Your next question is going to be, what are those? I don't have them off the top of my head. So I'll save you asking.
That's when you do your research, the
That's where
big
you do
R
your
word.
research, and I don't need to say anything.
That's true, it's true, and it could be small because I think when I like anything in the news or whatever, if I get overwhelmed, I shut down. I'm like, well, I can't do anything, It's and so it is like a call to take care of your nervous system. It's a call to take care of your mental health. Like, can you be grounded when crazy shit's happening so that you can then access your frontal lobe, and make that decision?
And the way to do that, and this is easier said than done. But for me, it's about finding that passion point that you have. And you brought up passion earlier on. You said it, and I love that you said that. Because as people who care, and I'm going to guess most people listening to this care a little bit to varying degrees, most of us, humanity is pretty altruistic. We're pretty good. So, or else we wouldn't have gotten to this stage of our evolution. So we care and we want to do something. But I think for those of us that are really altruistic, we want to do everything, right? I go outside, I want to adopt every stray dog, feed every homeless person, go build a house on the weekends, and then read to the elderly on my off time. How am I supposed to do that? So, what people need to really understand is it's not all on your shoulders to do everything. You're not an army of one. You don't have to do it all, and you don't have to be perfect. What you do need to do is figure out what's your lane. What area you're going to play in, and really put blinders on to just be doing that. It could be something you're passionate about because that's your personal passion. It could be something that you have a special skill in that the world needs. If you're financially well off, congratulations. It could be something you can contribute to because all of this takes money to get done. But once you've figured out what that is, laser focus on it. And to the point where you're almost heartless to anything else going on around you. And for me, it's taken many years to get to this point where I know what it is I need to be focused on and what I need to do, and I don't do anything outside of that. I don't God, this is gonna sound really bad, so I'm sure somebody's on the right wing is very gonna be very happy to clip this and make me look like a terrible person, but I don't give to charity. I, don't give to animal welfare even though I have my own dog and I love animals very, very much. I don't go build houses on the weekends, and I don't read to the elderly. I don't do these things because I know where my focus needs to be, and I know also that there are millions, if not billions of people doing all that other stuff. I don't need to do it by myself. So, and like we talked about at the very beginning, I don't look at environmentalism because it's not my passion. I honestly don't care, and I know there are others doing it. It's the same thing for everybody else. You don't have to do it all. Find that focus, that passion point, and that's going to be so much better for your mental health. It's going to be so much better for you bringing your full self to doing things because when you try to do everything, you're not going to accomplish much and you're going to get really despondent because you didn't accomplish what you thought you were going to. But if you focus, you will start to realize that you're accomplishing a lot more than trying to do everything at once.
Yeah, well, it's just so interesting. It sounds like what the companies do when they care. Let's do one thing and let's fucking do it good
That's it.
as best
Yeah,
as we can. And I do think that focus of your energy, then you can take care of your mental health, you can take care of other things because this is the one thing that you focus on. And it is true, like, you're not passionate about something, but I'll be passionate about the other thing. Like, we are all in this together when you think about it, like we're knitting things together. So if you can stay in your lane, that is enough.
absolutely. It's more than enough, and it's more than you would do
Mhm.
otherwise. So
Yeah,
just focus on that. And it's really hard for people to get their heads around because they think they have to do it all. It's this message that's been pushed, and it's kind of just, as people who care, you want to do everything. Of course you do, but it's not a sustainable model for people to be operating under, especially when the issues are so large and at scale that they are. It's impossible to do it all. I'm not a big proponent of the bottom up people power model of making change. Again, don't stop doing the amazing things that you're doing. Find that passion point and do the thing. But because of the scale of issues, it really again comes down to the private sector doing what they're supposed to be doing. And as we talk through this, maybe it's even to as simple as making smarter buying choices, like we talked about with spending cash. You don't need to be doing something that is monumental. Don't need to be creating the next innovation that cleans up the garbage patch in the Pacific Ocean. If you do, amazing.
that's
I
cool.
hope
Yeah.
there are people doing that, and that's super cool. But the solution can be as simple as just being smarter about where you're spending your money. Not only does that do good things for people and the planet, but in economic times like these, don't you want to spend your money in places where it makes an actual difference and isn't going to be wasted?
I know we just had the Oscars, and I saw your post about the Oscars.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like we're just doing the tea, like, let's just grab
Just
tea
do
and
it. Yeah.
uh
Oh my God, that's a great name for a podcast. Sustainability.
Oh
Stop it.
my god!
Oh, I was going, I promised people I would start a podcast at the end of January, and other things have come up, and so I put it off. And maybe that's the universe saying, "Hey, that was the wrong topic. Make sustainability." I'm writing it down,
Write that
and you're
down.
getting credit for it, by the
That's
way. So,
okay. I'm just glad I'm here in this moment. So, thank you. I love that. It
sorry
is
about
true
the.
because I
There we go.
feel like you take really important topics that are happening now and give your very good opinion of what's happening because as a consumer and like it's just hard to know what is happening in the back end of all the things and we want to believe that things are good and things are happening and like blah 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 but okay, this is going to sound really bad because
We're
our
past that.
I know. Well, like, we weren't impacted by the fires. We're far from the fires. But I did hear probably on TikTok, like, a lot of celebrity homes burned and all the stuff, and somebody said, like, how are the celebrities gonna feel when they get their "We Are the World" song for them dedicated to them for their house burning down? And it's like, oh my gosh, it's just so interesting because it did impact so many wealthy people and so many impoverished people at the same time. It was, fire is so cleansing. It's like any natural disaster is like the great equalizer in a lot of ways. And then the aftermath of it is there's somebody that's going to take an opportunity to rebuild. And what will they do with that? And how will they help or not?
Absolutely right. And we talked earlier. I gave the example of Nike and their "oh shit" moment that caused change for their business. And it's the same for people. People need to have an "oh shit" moment too before they'll start to change. The reason One of the many reasons why the positive change, the combating climate change has been so slow to happen is because those countries that are basically consuming the most, creating the most of the issue, are well away from the problems that they're creating. So, and somebody who worked and lived in the developing world for a long time, had I not lived and worked there, I wouldn't realize this. And I'm somebody that's in the space. So if you're sitting in a high rise in New York, or sitting in Malibu in your mansion, hopefully not in the ocean, you don't think about the people making your stuff, your clothes. You don't think about the stuff they have to go through. You don't think about the person in a factory in Guangzhou in China that is drinking polluted water, eating polluted food, breathing in polluted air, probably thousands of miles away because they had from their kid because they had to leave them behind in some village to send money back to them so they could make your pair of pants for $10 a day or whatever it is. And that's because it's more than arm's length away. So why would I change my behavior if it's really not impacting me that much? So now what we're seeing is finally things are starting to impact people in the developed world. And as heartless as it sounds, good. Because now maybe people will start to realize, hey, this is not a new thing. This is what people in the developing world have been suffering through and continue to suffer through and have been for decades. This is not a new thing. Climate change and the impacts of a change in the environment is not new. People in Bangladesh have to suffer through, days where it's literally, it feels like it's 60 degrees Celsius, which is what in oh God, I forgot my Fahrenheit, which is like 140
That's a
degrees
lot. Yeah.
Fahrenheit. It's a lot, right? So they suffer through these days because the environment's changed and then their houses get inundated with water because of flooding. So this stuff has been going on. So now maybe it's time that those that are creating the problem get a little taste of their own medicine. That's really heartless, but it's so true.
That's the T.
That's the tea.
That's a
That's the
sustainability.
smell of tea. You heard it here first, folks.
That's right. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so true. Yes. Yeah. And I think like it's important in what you're consuming and what you are researching or not researching is not again like, this is my peacemaker coming out like you versus me or like good on them. But it's so different when it's your experience. And that again is important in how are we going to move forward together versus the hierarchies of, I mean, money,
And that's
right?
what it's I love the peacemaker that you just mentioned because it's for so long been us versus them. It's not been a team sport to try to save the planet. It's always been, oh, it's China did that or India did that or but hey, guess what? When it comes to pollution and emissions, they don't care about political borders, right? And it's all very much a holistic system. You bought your iPhone. Someone had to make that iPhone. The pollution comes from making that iPhone so you could have your iPhone. Like we're all on the same rock, guys. So maybe because of these really terrible, tragic things that are happening now in the developed world, we will become one team and realize, hey, we are kind of all sharing this experience together and we need to do something concerted to make a positive change.
Mhm. Yeah. John, this is so fun. Okay. Is there one thing or two things or three things that you want listeners to know? And you kind of said a lot, but is if you could leave right now, what is one thing that you'd want them to know about sustainability?
Yeah, it really does come back to that idea around finding a passion point. A, finding a passion point and doing that, but B, it's not all on you to do everything. You don't have to be perfect. You don't listen to people that want to tell you you're doing the wrong thing because you haven't either done it all or maybe I don't it
Shame. There's
sounds
shame.
there's
Shame.
yeah, and you shouldn't need to be shamed as long as you're shame. As long as you're doing something right, then you've done
Yeah.
the right thing. I was very Yeah, that was very Shakespearean.
I love that.
So you should really just focus on sort of your lane, what it is you're doing, and be confident in the knowledge that you're doing the right thing, number one, and number two, there are others that will pick up where you can't. It's not all on your shoulders. Just do the right thing. I think it all comes down to that. Just do an authentically genuine thing that works for you. And if everybody starts to do that, we're going to see a lot of positive change happen. Fingers
Yeah.
crossed.
Yes, yes, and we need more good conversations about the good in the world that are happening, you know?
Absolutely.
I don't wanna see no bad news no more, okay? I'll tell you
Over it.
that
There's
right
plenty
now.
of yeah, and you talked about crazy stories and are they believable or not? I don't care. Like
Oh,
even the crazy stories that you think are not believable, now they're believable, which is
right.
God, how do we get here?
Exactly, that's why I'm
Haven't
like,
we been through enough?
I'm gonna untrain my brain that that can even be a possibility, because not in my world, okay?
That's it.
John, okay, where can people find you? What's your Instagram and also your book?
So I have a few books out. They're
Mm.
sitting
Oh,
behind my shoulder for anybody watching, of course. So my first book was, God, back in 2020 already. So it's called Sustainability for the Rest of Us, Your No Bullshit 5-Point Plan for Saving the Planet. It is a very practical guide to how about a lot of what we talked about today of how to switch your brain to be doing better, not necessarily a prescriptive list of what you should do. I don't tell people what they should do because that's up to you to figure out. But I think changing our mentality and psychology around these things is really important. So that's what that book talks about. The second book, that guy there, the green one, is called The Great Greenwashing, how what's the subtitle? Brands, influencers, and governments are lying to you. So that is all about greenwashing, all about how all of those different people are trying to take advantage of you and what to do about it. I have my Instagram, which is John A. Pabon. I have my TikTok, which I do a lot of things on. No dancing.
oh,
But
not yet.
not yet. You never know. You never know when those bills need to be paid.
That's right.
So I do a lot of long form content on there, and a lot of the explainers that you were talking about as well happen on my Instagram or my TikTok, my website, johnpabon.com. And I have sustainability, the podcast coming out apparently soon. So let's get that
Yes.
going. And my next book, which should be out a little later this year, is called Eat the Rich,
Ooh,
exposing the not so ethical behavior of the 1%, which is how I knew about the Resnicks because I've been researching unethical people.
damn.
Yeah.
Thank you for your service, John. Seriously. Thank you. I love it. And that's what I wanted to talk about was influencers.
Mm,
That's what skipped my brain.
let's do it.
Real quick, and then we'll wrap up. But what is happening? I feel like the influencer thing is dying, especially the Amazon influencer. I think everyone's kind of like, why do I need to buy a new Amazon dress every 2 seconds? But what are the trends that you're seeing in that?
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? Because TikTok had such a big influence. The TikTok ban had such a big influence on these major influencers and kind of how they thought about what their revenue streams were going to be. So I think they've been really, as much as we laugh at these people and call them stupid and look at them and go, "Oh, you're so dumb," they're not.
They're making a lot of money.
They
Yeah.
make a lot of money, and they have
Mm.
an entire team behind them doing strategy and figuring out, okay, how do I pivot to make the most money out of this situation? So what's happening now is you don't see, like you said, a lot of the Amazon hauls, the Shein hauls don't exist anymore like they used to. So there's been a pivot away from these, both from the individual influencer and from the companies asking influencers to do collaborations. So that's happening. Where that goes in the future, I'm not quite sure because these companies will still want to push and promote their products. So will it reach kind of the point of sustainable content collaborations? I don't think so. I keep an eye out for those. I don't do them except in very rare cases, but I do keep an eye to see if that's something that's happening, and it really hasn't happened yet. So I don't think it's quite there, and certainly for some of these, big social media influencers that have millions of followers, they're not gonna wanna do
Right.
that because there's probably not money in it. So I don't see it going that way, but at least we're not seeing these hauls of things, which were really aggravating to see people with boxes of junk in individual plastic bags. So at least we've gotten away from that because that absolutely sends the wrong message when people are seeing this stuff, and we saw it with, the likes of Shein and the Shein hauls and how much money that made the founders of Shein. The three founders of Shein are now on the Forbes rich list. They each have $5 billion.
Wow.
And that's all because people were buying little cheap individual pieces of junk that some teenage influencer in,
Yeah.
middle America, no offense, middle America, was showing on their TikTok. And that's kind of where things are. So it served its purpose, but they're not going to do that sort of thing again. And I'm sure it's the same with a lot of the social media brands. The holidays are over. What comes next? Not so sure. Hopefully it's something
TBD.
a little bit better. TBD.
TBD on the T. I love it. Okay, John, I'm so glad we're besties.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'll come to Melbourne
Perfect.
and we'll party
I need to make my way
sustainably.
back home sustainably. I need to make my way back home. I missed Christmas, so yeah,
Oh,
my
oh,
family's probably like, "Oh, hey,
yeah.
time to come
Remember
back."
us?
Yeah, we live over here, right?
Awesome. Thanks so much, John. We'll put all of
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
notes, your Instagram and your books. And thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. This has been great.
See ya.
See ya.
Thank you so much for listening to our show. If you are loving what you're hearing, please give us a review up on Apple Podcasts as it helps our show grow. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.